So, this happened in 2011, so the exact dialogue may have escaped my memory a bit, but the situation is something I'll never forget. Also, AIM was still pretty active during this time, and so was video chatting. Think TinyChat, this is important for later. I was on an online dating site, I won't say which because I'll be dragged mercilessly in the comments, and was talking to this guy. I was 31 at the time, he was 28. We talked for about 6 weeks before I gave him my phone number, and we took it offline to calling and texting for another couple of weeks. 2 months after our initial chat we were texting, and he told me that he was out having a few beers at a bar near my house. He asked what I was doing and asked if I wanted to come out, but I had a very long day at work and didn't feel like going to a bar. I'm also not a big drinker. I invited him over to my place after he finished at the bar, and he accepted. I figured I would be okay since I do keep firearms for protection and know how to defend myself if needed. I also had a webcam. I took a shower so I wouldn't smell like a water buffalo on a hot day. The air went out at work, put on some makeup and got dressed to wait. He then called and said he was outside of my house. I clicked record on my computer's webcam program and turned off my monitor and went to let him in. It's around 10 p.m. and he comes in and we go back to my bedroom because my living room was being remodeled. We're sitting on the bed chatting for about an hour, talking about everything under the sun. The conversation flowed. He was very handsome and so easy to be comfortable with. We got on the subject of firearms, and I showed him mine. About 15 minutes later he asks for some water, so I go to the kitchen to get him a bottle. When I came back, he said he got a phone call and had to leave. After he left, I looked on my nightstand where I put the firearm down after showing him and noticed that it was gone. I looked everywhere for it, thinking I had put it down somewhere else. Nope, not there. I then played back the recording from my webcam program and sure enough, it shows him grabbing it and putting it in his hoodie. I was terrified at that point. He knew where I lived. He had my firearm, and he left his phone on my bed. Right then his phone rings, and I answer it. Come to find out, he's married. His wife was calling him wondering where he was. I told her everything, including the fact that he stole my firearm and I had video evidence, and was calling the police on him. Next thing I know, he's banging on my door, my firearm in his hand, asking me for his phone. The conversation went like this: I need my phone, give me my phone. Me not opening the door, but yelling through the window, take the clip out of my gun, empty the chamber, throw the clip into the bushes, the one in the chamber across the road, and put it on the ground. Now, give me my phone. I'm on the phone with your wife at the moment, and I have you on video stealing from me. I put his wife on speaker. His wife said a whole bunch of expletives. He gave a shocked face. He runs and gets in his car, then comes back. I threw your gun in the ditch. At this point, I make him empty his pockets, take his pants off, take his hoodie off, and show me that he doesn't have my gun on him. All the while, his wife is on the phone. I go outside and get in his car in the driver's seat and tell him to take me to where he threw my gun. He proceeds to tell me that I don't know how hard it is for him, being a felon, not being allowed to own a gun ever because of a mistake he made. The mistake? Domestic violence involving a gun. We get up the road. He tells me the gun is there in the ditch. Then I realize the situation I'm in. I can get out of the car and go get it, leaving him to do whatever to me if he chose. He was 6'4", 225 pounds, me 5'3", 135 pounds at the time, or I could make him go get it, taking a chance of him seriously hurting me. I took that chance, since I was on his phone with his wife, and my phone with 911. He retrieves my gun, brings it back to the car, and I drive back to my house and wait on the police. I get out of the car, and he gets in the driver's seat. I'm still on the phone with the police. I walk around the back of his car to get his license plate number, and he just puts his car in reverse, hits me and takes off. They found him later that evening. He still had the clip and the one in the chamber in his pocket, so now he's enjoying time in prison. So glad I never have to meet this person again. I'm keeping some of these details vague because I seriously don't want the hosts to find out that I published this story. I don't think they would approve. I hope that is alright, and I'll try to still make it as comprehensive as possible. I spent a year studying in Mexico recently, and as you do on exchange, I tried to travel as much as I could. Between the semesters, there is a big break in me and my buddy that I spent the most time with during the exchange decided we'd go on a longer backpacking trip through Mexico together. We had a rough plan on where to go and what we wanted to see, but we hadn't even booked our flight back yet, nor were we sure from where we would take it from. We wanted to keep it flexible. We had an amazing time, and a few days before our trip ended, we finally decided we would take our flight from a city that was close and had really cheap flights, but the city itself didn't really have anything to offer. Then on Airbnb we found a room very close to the airport and a house with a pool, and we thought we'd just treat ourselves to a relaxed pool day at the end of the trip. It turned out that the hosts were a family. The husband was Mexican and the wife was from Europe and could even speak our native language, so we arranged that we would take a bus to the airport and that they would pick us up from there. When we finally arrived at the city, it was already dark, and the bus driver refused to drive us to the airport since it was not directly on his route, so he just dropped us off on the highway. That was already a pretty bad situation to begin with, standing with our backpacks at the side of the road in the middle of nowhere in a not-so-safe city in Mexico. But I called the hosts and sent them our GPS location, and they say no problem, they will come and get us. So the husband came to pick us up, and it was a very uncomfortable situation getting into the car with a stranger in the night in the middle of nowhere. It also didn't help that the guy looked like Danny Trejo without a mustache, and as I tried to make small talk with him, he only gave monosyllabic answers or straight out ignored me. Well, he's just not a big talker, I thought, and hoped we would arrive soon. Looking back, I can see a million red flags, but for some reason, at that time we just didn't see them. Either we were too tired, or to be honest, we didn't really have any other choice than going along anyway. So, but yes, we arrive, and that should have immediately set alarms off. We were in the middle of nowhere. There were fields with sheep and goats around, and all of a sudden, a gravel road branches off from the paved road, and along that gravel road there are about 6 huge mansions, all with 2 meters walls around them, topped with NATO fence, huge gates, and at least 2 gigantic guard dogs per house. When we entered the house, we were greeted by the wife, a bubbly middle-aged woman that was very talkative but pleasant. She had actually cooked dinner for us, and we ate while exchanging small talk. The husband just sat at the table not saying a single word. After dinner, we more or less went directly to bed because it had gotten late, and we were tired from a long day. The next morning we saw that the weather was not that good, so we decided to go into the town and just see the few touristy things it had to offer instead of spending it at the pool. When we came back it was already dark, but we decided to jump into the pool anyways to cool off, because it was very hot and humid. The wife joined us, and at some point, my friend made the mistake to ask how they were able to afford such a house. It didn't really match the price range of the jobs they were telling us that they were doing, and she deflected a bit and added that her husband was very handy because he had grown up in the streets and basically built the house himself. We realized that it maybe was not the best topic and broke the conversation off. That was the last day of our trip, and we had our flight back home early the next morning. We still had some weed left that we had bought on the trip, and we thought it would be nice to smoke one out since it was our last night. But as this was a family home, and they had kids around, we thought it would be better to speak to our hosts if they would mind. So later in the evening we asked the wife if it would be okay if we smoked on the terrace, which for some reason she found quite amusing, and started laughing. She shouted to her husband, who was lying on the couch watching TV, "My love, the boys asked if it would be okay if they smoked some weed. What do you think?" And he just laughed, but didn't give an answer. We looked at her with a dumbfounded expression, and she told us sure, just go ahead. So we went to the terrace and started smoking our joint. Later they joined us, and we just had a chat. And this is where things got really messed up. For some reason, they start asking all sorts of questions about the weed. where we got it, how much it was, who we got it from, and how much we would have to pay for that back in Europe. They just seemed way too interested in the weed, and at one point, the wife just nonchalantly revealed to us, yes, we thought about doing that as a source of income, selling weed, but too many people die doing that, because the cartels don't like that. Actually, my husband used to kill people for doing that. I immediately felt sober. Did she just say? And as if he read my mind, her husband added, yes, when I was about 16, I killed a lot of people for the cartel for money. And he said it in a tone as if he just said he used to mow lawns. When he was a teenager, I still thought I must have misunderstood, so I texted my friend who was sitting across the table from me, trying not to make eye contact, because I knew we would freak each other out. He confirmed that I had indeed understood right. We discussed what we should do and agree that there's no immediate threat, and that we just should stay. We don't have anywhere else to go anyways, and it is already late. But things got even crazier. We tried to keep our composure and not completely freak out while still making conversation with our hosts. A few minutes later though, the husband got up and went inside to get something, and he came back with a literal kilo of weed, pressed into a brick. He proceeded to break bits off the brick and roll them into a joint that would probably have knocked out Snoop Dogg. It was about the size of my thumb, and I guess it had about 2 grams of weed in there. Of course, he offered the joint to us, but we politely declined, saying that we were already pretty stoned. He seemed a little offended, but fortunately, he bought our excuse. But it got even worse. A few minutes later, we hear a couple of loud bangs. The wife became a bit uneasy and asked, "What was that?" To which he answered calmly 9mm to confirm my suspicion that there had indeed been shots. I would say it was around 7 or something shots, fired pretty quickly after each other. The wife got nervous and asked if we should maybe go inside, and what do you think they are shooting at in the air? At cows? At people? But he just shrugged it off, and we stayed outside. Again a few minutes later, there were more shots, this time even closer. The wife got even more upset and asked again, should we maybe go inside? What do you think they are shooting at? Should we go inside? And I think I will never forget when he answered in the calmest way imaginable, "No, everything's okay. I didn't hear any screams yet." I don't know why, but the way he just calmly said that freaked me the hell out, and is still making my heart beat whenever I think about it. After that, we quickly excused ourselves and went to our room. When we finally could talk, we basically both lost it and panicked. What the hell were we supposed to do? We are locked into a house with a contract killer in the middle of absolutely nowhere, and people are shooting outside. We decided it was probably our best bet to stay, because we thought, well, we are his guests, he is not going to harm us, hopefully, and it's better to have walls and dogs and a serial killer in between us and people shooting around. So we barricaded ourselves in the room and didn't sleep a second until the morning, when we hopped the hell out of there and went to the airport. I was never so happy to be patted down at security in my whole life. I'm writing this as a memoir of what happened while it's still fresh in my mind, and to share it with all of the amazing people here on the Let's Not Meet subreddit. I've been reading all of you for almost a year now, and I feel like I should share my story. I'll have to leave some details out, for reasons you'll soon learn. This happened 1 year, and 2 days ago, it was the day I never expected to come. It changed my life in so many ways that I still feel like I cannot digest it. I want to start saying a little bit about myself, so you understand the context, and why it was so weird and foreign for something like this to happen to me. I'm a fairly geeky guy. I love science fiction and video games. I worked at the time as a design engineer in a factory and spent most of my weekends with friends, hiking, playing board games, or watching movies. So you realize nothing I did would attract the attention of the cartels. I do not have a lot of money. I just live a lower middle class type of life here in Mexico. But the real issue was my sister, who has a high-ranking position in the public security area of politics. That is the reason I was targeted. It was a Tuesday early morning. I was on my way to work, which started at 6 a.m. I remember that day I took my dad's SUV because they were away on vacation, and I was supposed to pick them up at the airport after work that day. I lived about half an hour away from my work, so I left at about 5:25 a.m. every morning. When I was leaving, I saw a pretty shady SUV parked like a block away from my house. And honestly, after my sister took her job, I was more aware about things that I saw out of place. I felt a little bit paranoid because weeks before it happened, I felt like someone was following me. So yeah, I passed this SUV and saw a guy on the driver's seat with a baseball cap. I stopped for a bit, looked him straight in the eye, and he just looked down and covered his face. I honestly didn't think too much of it. My family had been telling me weeks prior that I was just overreacting. And no one was following me, so I thought it was just some random guy waiting for someone. I took off to work, and for me to get there, I have to go through a really ugly neighborhood, which is poorly lit and has a really bad reputation. I was in a 2-lane street that's only one way. I was in the right lane at the time and saw a Jeep Cherokee just speed by me on the left lane, and then continue its way in front of me. When we arrived at the end of the street, I had to turn right to get to work, and the Cherokee just completely stopped on the right lane in front of me, with their blinker signaling to the left. I found it kinda weird, but I did not want to be an asshole and honk at them and wanted to give them a few seconds to move. While I was waiting, a freaking Explorer came screeching on the left lane. It stopped next to me, and 4 guys came out of it with guns, and one with a baseball bat. The guy with the bat smashed my window and hit me in the face, while another put a gun to my head and said "Esto es de verdad, pendejo." Valle del Caro translates to, "This is real, asshole. Get out of the car." So, please understand that at the moment I did not feel like they wanted to steal my car. I already knew they were trying to kidnap me. If I knew they just wanted the car, I would have given the car to them. But I pieced everything together, the cars that I felt were following me at night every day, the guy just sitting on the SUV outside of my place, and obviously my sister's job. I knew that if they took me, it would be torture followed by certain death. And if they really wanted to kidnap me, they would not kill me. So I stepped on the gas, I smashed between the Cherokee and the Explorer, and ran over one of the guys. I spat as much as the SUV would give me and honked so I could make a lot of noise, and people would notice. My hope was to get to my workplace, which had private security, and call my sister so she could talk to the police. With all the adrenaline on me, I passed the entrance to my work and tried to turn back, but I crashed on a corner. At that moment, I honestly felt like my heart would come out of my mouth. Everything moved so slow, so I tried to calm myself down. I breathed, saw through my mirrors if they were following me, and I saw no one. An empty street that was already lit by the morning dusk. The SUV was still working. I turned around, got to my work, yelled at the security guards to open the doors. I parked at the entrance, got out of the car, and called my sister. After that, I went inside and talked to my boss about what had happened and went to the restroom to clean the glass and blood off my hair and face. When I came out of the restroom and out to the parking lot, there were about 10 cop cars outside my workplace. My sister had already told me to speak with a specific police officer and confirm his name. Everything went smooth, and I felt safe and protected. After that, I moved into my sister's house, which has police guarding it. I have bodyguards that are with me every time I go out. This has cost me my job, relationships, lifelong friendships. Everyone's afraid to hang out with you when they know you are a target for the cartels. And it's understandable, but it does not make it feel any less awful. Investigations continued through the beginning of 2017. I later found out through security camera footage that there were 3 vans in total with about 12 people trying to kidnap me. I found out that the cartel that was after me was one of the most powerful cartels in the world, and that the person who was in charge of investigating my case was killed. So, right now I'm working for the Mexican government. It's a low-profile job which does not pay much and does not attract too much attention. I've looked for ways to leave the country, but I do not have enough money or qualifications. I'm a college dropout. I'm still living with my sister, with people protecting me and my family 24 hours a day, and the guys who tried to kidnap me are still at large. I'm trying to make the best of this situation. I've lost a lot of weight, I spend more time with my nephews, and recently got into a steady relationship. But honestly, I'm always on edge and feel like I'm in imminent danger. So, to the guys who tried to kidnap me, let's not meet. I went to summer camp in a rural part of New Jersey back in the mid-1990s. The camp was situated on a long, narrow man-made lake. One end of the lake was reserved for swimming, which we do as a group activity every other day or so. The swimming area had one long dock stretching straight out into the water and 2 square floating docks further out. One of the 2 floating docks was a bit far away, and although I had spent a few summers at this camp at the time of this incident, I had never seen anyone use the second dock. One day our group of about a dozen 11-year-olds got the bright idea that we were going to swim out to the faraway dock. I would consider this to be a moderate challenge for a casual swimmer. When we reached the dock, I noticed a strange-looking spider on the ladder that you had to use to climb up. It was quite large in terms of overall footprint, probably about 2 inches, 5 centimeters from end to end, with long skinny legs. Spiders, of course, are normal critters to encounter in nature, but this one stood out to me because of its unusual appearance. After the long swim, we took a few minutes to lie on the dock and rest in the sun. It was relaxing, and we were all having a good time. We started messing around and decided to play one of our regular games where we would all shuffle toward the corner of the dock, causing it to sink. As the corner of the dock started to sink and fill with water, suddenly hundreds of giant spiders came frantically pouring out from between the boards, swarming over and around the feet of those of us who were still standing on dry ground. This dock was theirs, apparently. We all immediately began to scream and jump into the water trying to get away, but the spiders were in the water too, and stuck to us as we swam. I vividly remember the feeling of them clinging to my wet hair, fleshy bodies, and long squirming legs hopelessly intertwined with my own strands. Adrenaline propelled us back to the main part of the swimming area, and by the time we got there, thankfully we were spider-free, but this is a childhood trauma that lingers with me. I had not really been afraid of spiders before, but I would say this was a major turning point. The thought of us lying on the dock in the sun, completely oblivious to the horde that was lurking just inches beneath us, creeps me out to this day.